We are Rogue Media Sports.
It is the Cam Show. It is Rogue Media Sports Network. Happy Wednesday to you. Do we still call that Hump Day, Zach? Do we still do that? Do the kids still do that?
I don't know if the kids still do it. I know people who still do it, so I guess it's okay.
You yourself are not a kid, so
I'm not. Well, and I don't use it. But again, as you said, I'm not a kid. So.
I'm at the age where now it's like I need to question if my friend, like, we're kind of aging out in terms of my friends. They're not really knowing the lingo anymore.
Yeah, no.
My girlfriend does. She works in a middle school, so
then she's
she
the one
might know too much, actually.
Ooh, like
in terms of like
she's too hip.
Slang, very much too hip.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure too hip is not something that's used anymore either.
Too hip to quit, something like that. Anyway, we're starting today's show. We are going to talk later about Chaim Bloom and why Red Sox fans should really be lining up to kiss his ass, as once again Chaim Bloom pays off a year after he's fired. But we got to start with this big ESPN story that came out this morning. Don Van Natta, not someone I've heard of. Nothing against him. Maybe I don't follow ESPN enough, but I just expect a kind of a bombshell like this to have. I don't know. I don't want to diss Don Van Natta's career compared to mine, but I've never heard of this guy. He drops this story this morning. Winners write history inside Robert Kraft's 12-year Hall of Fame quest. And it's clearly well researched and has a lot of good sources on here. It's a long, long story. If you wanted to use the Spotify version of it and hear it out loud, it's about a half hour. So it takes a long time to get there, but it's all about exactly what the headline says. Robert Kraft trying to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in what has now become more or less a propaganda tour after the Patriots stopped winning Super Bowls to get their owner into the Hall of Fame. There's two big takeaways from me in this story. The first, what I will go over, is Robert Kraft deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. There is no question Robert Kraft deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. The fact that there are 16 owners in NFL history that are in Canton and one of them is not Robert Kraft, that's crazy. How do you have 16 owners in the Hall of Fame and none of them are Robert Kraft? I can't get over that. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has spearheaded the greatest dynasty in the history of American sports. When you take the context of everything, the era that it was in, the league it was in, and for a team to thoroughly dominate it for that long, it's not supposed to happen. Not supposed to happen. Like, as great as the Chiefs have been, as great a dynasty as the Chiefs have had the last handful of years here, 3 Super Bowls in 5 years? They're halfway to the trophy count of the Patriots, and they're a quarter of the way for the run of dominance. The Patriots did it for 20 years. I mean, in reality, 19 seasons. They did that. And this guy was the start of it all. I mean, the Patriots were literally going to move. They were going to move to St. Louis. And Robert Kraft came in, bought the team, way overpaid. Everyone thought at the time it was the highest bill for a North American professional sports franchise at the time. And it was for a middling team. Played in the middle of nowhere, had no stars at that point. They eventually get Bledsoe, they get Parcells, but they have like no history. They're being run out of town, and he turns them into the greatest dynasty in NFL history. He should have already been in the Hall of Fame. Like, what are we talking about, man? And I've seen some of the detractors. Some of the detractors would say, well, you got 2 major scandals and a rub and tug situation with Robert Kraft. There's an image thing there. Okay, well, to be honest, I'd argue that neither of those scandals have anything to do with Robert Kraft, and one of them is a bona fide conspiracy theory with Deflategate. Like anyone that's a reasonable adult with a brain realized that was bullshit almost as soon as it happened. Anyone who has a basic understanding of science and weather understands that is complete bullshit. Spygate, don't think that has anything to do with the owner, really. I think that was pretty well established as a head coach problem. And again, put on my Patriots conspiracy theory hat if you want, but it's not as big a deal as most people make it out to be. And of course, this flashy headline of Robert Kraft involved in a sex slavery ring turned out to be completely false. He got a happy ending at a massage parlor. I think it's not as bad as people think. I think they're two consenting adults because it's not a sex ring anyway. Sex trafficking ring, which they tried to throw him in there with that headline, and it just turned out to be false. So even if you want to say those are really bad things, okay, fine. Eddie DeBartolo's in the Hall of Fame. He was caught in an extortion case. He had to sell his team because he was caught up in an extortion case with the governor of Louisiana. Oh, and by the way, Eddie DeBartolo also had sexual assault claims, had to settle out of court. A little worse than a rub and tug, if you ask me. So there's not a character thing you can throw at and say Bob Kraft should not be in because of X, Y, and Z off the field. Doesn't matter. It does not hold up to these other owners who are in the Hall of Fame. And speaking of which, if we're looking at the owners that are in the Hall of Fame, there is only one who has 6 Super Bowls. Nobody has more than Robert Kraft. And only the Rooney family has 6. That's Dan Rooney who's enshrined, by the way. Others would include DeBartolo, like I mentioned, Ralph Wilson of the Bills. What did he ever win? Went to the Super Bowl a couple times. Pat Bowlen of the Broncos had a nice little run. The other one is Jerry Jones. The other one that I want to highlight, I should say, is Jerry Jones. And that's someone Robert Kraft wanted to highlight as well. Because in the story, Van Nada's got a source with a quote from Robert Kraft that said after Jerry Jones got in 2017, he hadn't made an NFC championship game in 2 decades at that point. How does that get you in the Hall of Fame? Jerry Jones had a nice little run at the beginning of things. 3 Super Bowls out of 4. There's only like 3 teams in NFL history that can say that. One of the other owners whose teams did that is not in the Hall of Fame. That's Robert Kraft. But like seriously, if we're comparing the resumes of Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft, and you look at those down the breadth of that list, and you say one of these guys is a Hall of Fame, guess who it is? No one's going to guess Jerry Jones. Nobody. Again, we're talking almost 30 years now since he's had a team even make the conference championship game. Robert Kraft, in that time, by the way, made 8 straight AFC championship games. And in that time that Jerry Jones has not made the NFC championship, the Patriots won 6 Super Bowls. How do you then put Jerry in the Hall of Fame? Maybe that guy with the Commanders is right, because Jerry Jones is the guy who actually runs this league. And they play it off as friends, and I'm sure they are, friendly in a very professional sense in terms of the way the league goes. But these guys fucking hate each other. And you know what was a good example was Deflategate. Because Jerry Jones, that whole time, is praising how good a job his little puppet, Roger Goodell, is at running this league. And Bob Kraft was the only one almost going out on a limb saying, hey, this guy's a fucking bozo. And he's going to ruin your team next. It's like that old adage, they came for the gypsies and I wasn't a gypsy. And then it comes down to, a couple years after Deflategate, all of a sudden, Jerry Jones' star running back, Zeke Elliott, is suspended for a quarter of the season. Boy, does that sound familiar. 4 games out of 16. And he's suspended off unsubstantiated claims. Boy, does that sound familiar. So meanwhile, Kraft's probably laughing, just sitting back laughing, saying, you wouldn't stand up for me and now they came after you with the same thing, I wouldn't piss on you to put out the fire around you. These guys do not like each other, and I'm sure it was big time salt in the wound, as we heard in this story, that Jerry Jones gets in the Hall of Fame over Robert Kraft. Like, nobody that's an NFL fan believes Jerry Jones is a better owner than Robert Kraft. Nobody. Jerry Jones takes over the Cowboys in a tough time in their history. To be fair, a tough time. They were pretty bad towards the end of the 80s. He fires Tom Landry. It's a big, big deal. And within a few years, they're winning Super Bowls again. The Patriots were in a bad situation too. Okay? Robert Kraft didn't have to fire a legendary coach because they never had a legendary coach. They didn't have Super Bowl trophies or banners in their arena. They didn't have that. They were around the same amount of time as the Cowboys with 1/100th of the tradition. Boo-hoo, Jerry had to go fire Tom Landry. Robert Kraft had to keep the team in the city it was in and had no history. A stadium that was a complete fucking dump. There's no hole in the roof for God to watch the games. Okay, there's no America's team branded on the Patriots. And all he does is take them over and make them a better franchise than the Cowboys ever were. It's comical, man, that Jerry Jones is in there, who hasn't done shit for 30 years. In fact, you ask any Cowboys fan around here where I am in Texas, and they'll tell you he's a detriment to the team. Robert Kraft never made himself the GM. He knows that's not his thing. Jerry Jones is not his thing either, but here we are, 30 years into him being the GM. He is literally working against his team. And Robert Kraft brought in the best people possible and made them into a winner. If you don't want to have owners in the Hall of Fame at all, I can understand that. I don't think it's a great thing, but they are in, and 16 of them are in. And none of them are Robert Kraft. By the way, Zach, he's going to get in this year. They're going to do that voting in a couple of weeks. He's going to get in.
You're calling it?
Yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous. And they changed the rules now with the contributors thing.
Mm-hmm.
So owners aren't going up against coaches and players, essentially.
Okay, then yeah.
And I think it was a little different. Like I think they'd be going up against coaches. So it's contributors to the game. That's how they got a referee in the Hall of Fame. They had a fucking referee in the Hall of Fame before. No, I don't think so. Before Robert Kraft. Like that's just ridiculous, man. That's ridiculous. So that's the first part. And the most important part of this article is that Robert Kraft should be in the Hall of Fame. All Jerry Jones has done in 30 years is make the Cowboys very valuable. Congrats. You built the stadium. Awesome. Round of applause for Jerry. Let's get him a bust. They're at the top of the Forbes list every year. Most valuable franchises. By the way, you don't have to go deep down into that list to find the New England Patriots. Even this year, when they stink. Again, we are talking about a team that was on the move. They were leaving town. They had no history, no tradition, the worst stadium. Nobody wanted to go there as a fan or as a player or as a coach. They were a laughingstock. Bob Kraft put them in the top 10 of that Forbes list every year and won 6 Super Bowls. All Jerry Jones did after 96 is get him to the top of that Forbes list. Congrats, baby. Where did it get you? Barely got you out of Bob Kraft's shadow. And you will not live long enough, Jerry. You will never touch 6 Super Bowls. No chance. You won't even sniff Bob Kraft's accomplishments. So he's going to get in this year. The other important part of this article is the campaign. The propaganda campaign, as I'm calling it. And anybody who's followed the Patriots the last few years, we saw this. We didn't need a story to see this. Bob Kraft has clearly been lobbying to get into the Hall of Fame at least the last 4 or 5 years. And it has been, since the Brady Belichick departure, it has been all these things in media that you see hyping up the Patriots. In fact, I've got one behind me here. I had one behind me. Yeah, we got one. This book, which was almost certainly given editorial review by someone in the Kraft group. This is a 600-page blowjob on what Bob Kraft built with the Patriots. The first quarter of it is all about Bob Kraft and his strategy towards buying the team and getting the ship in the right direction. He deserves that. It's all true. But if you don't believe Bob Kraft had to sign off for this book for Jeff Benedict to write it, you're crazy. It doesn't stop there either. I had a lot of people telling me how great the 10-part docuseries The Dynasty was on Apple TV. I couldn't make it halfway through. Thought it was bullshit, man. It was an absolute hit job on anyone that wasn't Brady and Kraft, mainly Belichick. It was, and by the way, the Krafts and the Patriots have denied any involvement in any kind of editorial decisions or producer decisions. They have denied any kind of involvement with this docuseries. I'm calling bullshit there. If you watch it, it's pretty obvious. This is absolutely a pro-Kraft angle. And again, Kraft deserves positivity, but it almost took on an anti-Belichick slander, anti-Parcells slander. And it was just all about how great Bob Kraft and Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe were. That's essentially what it becomes. In fact, I thought Parcells and Belichick got duped into interviewing for that docuseries. So here we are, and this is where I think Patriots fans could be upset, because the team has been in transition at best. They've been a dumpster fire at worst the last 4 years. And in that time, Bob Kraft has been pretty concerned about getting in the Hall of Fame and getting that image out there, reminding everyone how great the dynasty was and not how good his football team is right now. And, you know, it's been kind of trying to distance himself from Belichick the last few years. It's been, oh, well, Bill did this wrong. And in fact, in this docuseries, Kraft calls Belichick a sap. That's almost where I gave up. You're a total sap for the Spygate thing. I'm like, are you kidding, man? Like, you clearly recorded this before the end of the season. Did you know you were going to fire Belichick so you could throw him under the bus like this? Like this, to me, I thought that was bullshit. And clearly there is a rift between those two, Kraft and Belichick. They won't admit it. Certainly Kraft won't, but there's clearly a rift there. And so as a Patriots fan, I'm looking at, you know, a team that didn't build enough in the last few years in order to put their number 3 overall pick quarterback out there week 1. They did an exhaustive coaching search only to get a guy who played for the Patriots, exclusively played for the Patriots, and who only coached for the Patriots. And so we're trying to run Bill out of this building, but let's get one of Bill's disciples in here to coach the team. To me, that's lazy. That's a guy who wants to, you know, make docuseries and write books about getting into the Hall of Fame and is not worried about how his football team is going to look taking the field in 2024 or 2023 or 2022. This is a guy 2 years ago who said the playoffs are the expectation. Anything less than the playoffs is a failure. To now saying, I just hope we get better. And I really like the way our coaching staff's coming along. That's a guy who cares about the Hall of Fame. He's got 6 Super Bowl rings. There's probably not an owner who's going to get there again. And he's like, I'm solidifying my legacy here, and I don't want anybody to forget what my legacy is. And then when I get in the Hall of Fame, maybe then we can start worrying about the next one. I think that's what I'm taking out of this. By the way, Don Van Natta, oh, God. It starts right off the bat with this one, Zach. He opens this. This is the lead of the story. Robert Kraft has an $11 billion empire and 6 Super Bowl rings. 5, if you count the one Vladimir Putin stuffed in his pocket during a 2005 meeting in Russia. It's like, oh my God. Like, just give me a break, dude. Like that. That's a true story, allegedly. Bob Kraft has told that story, but he wanted to put Vladimir Putin in there first sentence.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to have, well, this guy's pretty great, but he visited Vladimir Putin 20 years ago.
And because that's a brush, you put, him next to anybody that's gonna,
Like, that's so bullshit. Yeah, that's exactly. They just want Vladimir Putin's name in there because it's somehow, it's loosely connected to Robert Kraft for that one meeting. Like, I almost gave up after that, but I was like, you know what? This is going to be good. This is going to be good. We'll find out what it is. Stacey James, the Patriots PR chief, said it's utterly ridiculous to say the book and docuseries are part of an effort to win Kraft's induction to the Hall. It's clear from the inquiries presented in this line of questioning for this story that there's an agenda being pushed regarding the portrayal of Robert Kraft in the Pro Football Hall of Fame process. I don't mind that. That shows some balls from the Patriots side. I don't think it's true, but hey, I don't mind being on the offensive if you're the Patriots PR staff, and Stacey James has been used to doing that. Robert Kraft has been used to doing that before. But yeah, I'm not buying that the fact that they're not part of this at all. Because, by the way, and it also mentions in the story, Kraft does own the film and television rights to this book, The Dynasty. So that means if the book could be turned into a film, it could only be done with Kraft's permission. Love that. Love that. And according to emails, documents, and sources, Kraft owns the docuseries, licensed it to Apple, and sought editorial control. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. And again, if you watch this thing, you'd be like, well, if anyone with the Patriots has a say here, it's Robert Kraft. So, so two big takeaways, again, to kind of recap this. Bob Kraft absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame. If you're going to include owners and fucking referees, then Bob Kraft should absolutely be in there. But the second thing is, I am a little perturbed as a Patriots fan that it seems there's been a campaign the last 3 or 4 years to build up Robert Kraft more than anyone else in the franchise, and he should be recognized among the best. Oh, but all the while this is happening, while we're telling you how great it used to be, the team on the field sucks right now, and we're in a complete what do the Catholics call it? Limbo. Complete limbo as to what this franchise is going to be, and it might never be good again. Probably will at some point. Not dynasty good, but probably be good again. But that does perturb me as a Patriots fan who is living and dying with whatever's going on the field every Sunday. And I've got an owner who's saying, look how great it used to be. I should be in the Hall of Fame now. But yeah, he should be in over Jerry Jones. I mean, that goes without saying. Anyway, from one owner to another ownership group in Boston that I have more beef with. That's because I think Red Sox fans need to start thanking Chaim Bloom for what he built with this team and the fruits of that labor we are going to see in a few years, and why I still think this ownership group gave up too early. That's coming up next on The Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. we are back on the Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. If you missed it in the first one, yes, Robert Kraft should be in the Hall of Fame. Yes, he also probably had a big say in the documentary and the book that went out about his team the last few seasons, and remember how great this team truly, truly was. But now we're shifting to the Red Sox, and I went yesterday with how, you should end the baseball season a month early. I think that's going to catch steam, Zach. I really do. I think that's going to catch on in the commissioner's office.
Like
that Labor Day weekend.
By next year, or
Yeah, why not?
All right.
Screw it. Sure. I think that I didn't mention this yesterday. I think the players would like that too.
Oh, for sure. I agree with you there.
Now, there's got to be some union stuff you got to work out because there's some guys who are on the major league per diems almost if they're going up and down, but guaranteed contracts, man.
I mean, I feel like
love that.
A lot of times, players would be on board with less games.
Yeah, especially fucking Anthony Rendon. That dude's we just make it 16, 17 games like the NFL.
Yeah.
I've always, before I get into this Red Sox thing, because I get fascinated by guys like Anthony Rendon who are at the top of their profession. I mean, he's obviously not had a good couple years with the Angels, but you know what I mean? The top 0.1% of baseball players on the planet. And he's just I don't really like baseball.
Yeah, though, yeah. Then he come out, I guess it was earlier this season, and say that.
He doesn't. And Curtis Martin was another one, played for the Patriots and the Jets, went to the Hall of Fame. And in his Hall of Fame speech, he's like, yeah, I think I've watched 2 football games ever. Start to finish. He just doesn't really care. He doesn't really keep up with it. And And I just think about that, especially baseball and football, the amount that you have to know as a good Major League Baseball hitter. Maybe he's forgotten it because he's no longer a good Major League Baseball hitter. Or the playbook for a Curtis Martin.
Yeah. Because he had seasons where he was phenomenal. So obviously,
he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You have to know an insane amount about this game to play it at that level. And they're just I don't really care. There's a goal, the goalkeeper for Barcelona, Marc-Andre ter Stegen. He is he did an article a few years ago, and he was do you talk about soccer when you get home? And he's never. I mostly, we talk about my wife's job more. She's an architect. And I'm that's insane to me. I'm healthy, I'm sure, for the home life, but you just to play day in, day out, 162 games a year, and you just don't really care about it.
Yeah, no, some people are just different like that in a way.
Man. I would love to have that fucking talent, though. I hate accounting, but I can't do math. Imagine if I was unbelievably good at that and I was just making millions of dollars and I didn't care. I have plenty of mental illness problems. I would live with that one. I'd be so okay with that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of just doing something I hated or just didn't even really like for that kind of money. I think I'd be okay. Everyone's got a price. I would definitely do too.
Yeah. No, I get that. I've seen it in other things too, of where somebody's just so talented. And when you ask them about what they do and stuff like that, it's just yeah. I remember, this is super nerdy, but I remember Todd McFarlane, who created Spawn and is known as this phenomenal comic book artist, where it's sometimes he's I've heard him say hey, I just get tired of drawing. I want to talk about how I played minor league baseball and how he owns McGuire and Sosa's record-breaking home run balls.
That's sick.
That's what paid that's so what paid
sick,
him.
Man.
But then he created all those statues and figurines you see of super nerdy stuff are all McFarlane toys. They go into sports and stuff too. He branched out and did other things. He's I just don't So it's in all fields that you have people that have just all this talent that eventually they're just it's what I do to make money.
That's crazy to me, man.
Yeah.
Because you think of how, especially sports, because of how much other people put into it.
Yeah.
Emotionally, monetarily, there's literally a guy who owns the team who's paying you $30-40 million a year. There's so much that's into this, and that's why people were stunned and angry when he was I don't really like it. You know what I mean? And I mean, what are you gonna do, right? He doesn't like it. Weirdly enough, I talk for a living. I don't like talking to people.
I'm the same way.
At all, especially outside of this office. You know what I mean? In fact, I'm quite bad at talking to people. I'm terrible at small talk and relating to people. You hear me on these coaches shows that I have to call these people up.
You're
and
able
try
to
make
mask
small
it
talk.
well for the coaches shows.
Well, I'm just like, hey, how's it going? All right, you ready to do this now?
Yeah.
And I know some people don't like that, and they teach you to not do that in journalism school. But
No, I'm with you though.
I didn't
Small
pick up
talk is
anything.
the absolute worst.
And so I guess there's some of that, like I do talk for a living, but I don't like talking to people. Anyway, this is about Chaim Bloom. This is
yeah, but you don't
it's a
go
Chaim
you
Bloom
don't go
segment.
out and tell people that like I've never liked talking.
Right.
Like,
Right.
But yeah.
And Chaim Bloom, I think, liked being a baseball executive. Probably still does. And I'm sure these guys like playing baseball. But I'm talking about Chaim Bloom today because I was on this train this is too early to get rid of Chaim Bloom. I you look at the major league product and you can say it's not good enough in Chaim Bloom's era. What we're used to with the 21st century Red Sox, the missing the playoffs, 3 of the 4 years, like that's not good enough. Okay, sure. I'll hear that because I agree. Overall, that's not good enough. But when the ownership group brings in a different crony, another GM who has, no big time experience, no GM experience, he's been in front offices, but you bring him in and then you run into the same issues. You're not spending money in free agency. Then I'm starting to wonder, what is the common denominator here? It's not the general manager. It's the ownership group. And now I'm upset at Breslow again. And it's like, why am I? I should just be upset with the ownership group because this is exactly what happened the first time. So Chaim Bloom comes in 2020. I talked about this on the show yesterday. Comes in 2020. And the first order of business, Chaim, thanks for coming on. I'm so glad you finally get to be a full-time GM rather than the assistant with Tampa. First order of business, we've got the best player in the American League. You need to go and trade him. And everyone knows you have to trade him. So go see what you can get for him. There's about 3 teams that could do business with you, and they all know that you have to get rid of him. So good luck getting a good return there. And Chaim Bloom gets a guy who's in your everyday lineup this year, and one who was in your everyday lineup for a couple of years, Verdugo and Wong. Take a shot on Jeter Downs, didn't work. And it's obviously it's a failure. It was never going to be a success. There was no way that those 3 guys were going to aggregate anything close to what Mookie Betts gives you. And they didn't and haven't. So that's a miss. But he had the chance to really spend on one free agent, and that was Trevor Story. And you can call that a failure of a contract, but it's not because the guy stinks. It's because the guy gets hurt a lot, and he's back in the lineup. But he gets hurt every year. It's tough to pin that one on the GM. It really is. And the one thing that was an even worse situation than their major league payroll when Chaim Bloom got there was the farm system. We talked about Dave Dombrowski yesterday and the success he had with the Red Sox, the success he's now having with the Phillies, success he's had everywhere he's gone. It comes at a price. In order to give you a championship window, which he does for every team he goes to, he is going to gut your farm system. He is going to trade your best prospects for good major leaguers, typically at the trade deadline. That's what you signed up for. That's what you got. In fact, you brought him in with a pretty good farm system. You had the number 1 prospect in baseball, Yohan Moncada. Came up at the end of the 2016 season. You had a pretty damn good pitching prospect in Michael Kopech, like top 10 guy. You traded them both, but you traded them for Chris Sale. That's a win. You traded 18-year-old Anderson Espinoza, the single A guy. He's a phenom. He's going to come in and he's your future. He's the next Pedro. They traded him for Drew Pomeranz. It took Espinoza years to get up to the major leagues. Like 6 years later, he made it to the major leagues with Chicago. Had all kinds of injuries. Drew Pomeranz, nothing to write home about, but he gave you something in a year where you won the division title in 17 and won the World Series in 18. So he gutted your farm system, but he did it for a good cause. You got a World Series team, get the best Red Sox team ever out of it in 2018. Chaim Bloom comes in, and his main objective after trading Mookie Betts is to build up this farm system. And now you've got one of the top farm systems in baseball. In fact, yesterday, it became official. Roman Anthony is now the number 1 prospect in all of baseball. And you could argue he's not even the best prospect in the Red Sox farm system. That's how good it is right now. Marcelo Meyer, that's another a pick by Chaim Bloom. He's in the top 5. Kyle Teal, first-round pick last year by Chaim Bloom, is in the top 30 overall. Christian Campbell, Braden Montgomery, outside of those big 3, you have got a great crop coming in the next couple of years. Guys that need to be on the 40-man roster like next year. That's all Chaim Bloom, man. They had one of the worst farm systems in baseball when he took over. And by the way, Phillies are on a great run right now with Dombrowski, and they could well win the World Series this year. Check on their farm system in 3 to 5 years. It's just what happens. It's what happens with this guy. All that to say, you bring a guy in with the absolute bare bones of a farm system. I mean, we're talking Bobby Dahlbeck, and he comes in and makes it a top 10 farm system in baseball. And how do you reward him? You fire his ass. For what, man? This is the reason why there wasn't a good enough product at the major league level was not the general manager. It was the GM before re-signing some bad contracts, namely Chris Sale. And yes, you could have said that was a bad contract at the time. Not great money for Nate Eovaldi in terms of what he gave you, but he ended up giving you an all-star season, and he was your number 1 guy, and then you let him walk. The problem was not Chaim Bloom. And you're going to see that when the Red Sox are a contender in 2 to 3 years with these guys as the core. You're going to realize that it was not Chaim Bloom. That Chaim Bloom actually set you up really well for the future. And by the way, in the short term, he did some good things too. You want to go back to that 2021 team? That had a lot of Chaim written all over it in year 2. Okay? And that was a team that was 2 wins from the World Series. And then they couldn't believe they let Eddie Rodriguez walk. How does that look now? It looks just dandy. Just fine, actually. The guy had a team of nobodies, one that finished in last place the year before, that was a huge disappointment 2 years before, and would finish in last place the next year. He brought them to within 2 games of the World Series. They were toe-to-toe with Houston, the dynasty of the Houston Astros. And you want to tell me Chaim is the problem? No. We should all be lining up to kiss Chaim's ass after what we are seeing with this farm system. And yet again, a team that's not good enough at the major league level. So again, we got to look at the common denominator here. It's not Chaim Bloom. Chaim Bloom's not in the room with us anymore. You don't like the current guys offseason. You don't like the current guys trade deadline. You don't like the current team on the field. That's not Chaim Bloom's problem. The team that you're going to have in a couple of years, that's going to be Chaim Bloom's problem in a good way. Going to be the same thing we said about Dan Duquette with that 03-04 Red Sox team. Theo Epstein did a lot to put that team together, more than Craig Breslow has done so far, but that absolutely had some Dan Duquette seeds in there. Chaim Bloom did it more impressively. He didn't pay Manny Ramirez a ton of money. He had an eye for talent. So you went out there and you got a guy who you're also chastising as a bad GM in Craig Breslow after year 1, and we don't know that he has the eye for talent that Chaim Bloom clearly does. It's too bad. They should have never got rid of him. One guy we'll never get rid of is Pete Souza. He's going to talk with us on the Cam Show. That's coming up next.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Pete Souza here on the Cam Show.
I'm so excited to be here today.
I gotta apologize. No one likes journalists like other journalists.
Yeah.
You say Don Van Natta is pretty good.
He's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love the investigative journalists. There's not many anymore.
Yeah.
They're fucking going on Hinge to try and get directors of content to go on dates with them. So I like a good real investigative journalist.
I'm never important enough for Don Van Natta to come knocking on my door. But if he comes knocking on your door or somebody else's, I'm reading that piece. Like he's very, very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of him. That's on me.
He did
It's on me.
He did a piece about the decision, like a retrospective piece, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. That was like lights out. They turned it into like one of those short documentaries for ESPN. It was really, really good.
Do you find LeBron annoying?
No, I have like a low key love affair with LeBron. I do. Like
It's classic Pete.
No. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. Don't start. I'm that guy with like superstars in my childhood. But today, the reason I say that, and this isn't like a take of any kind, but LeBron is like a good man. And like,
sure,
he stood the test of time, like as far as his ability to play the sport and his ability to be a good man. Like some of my favorite players of all time, being from Philadelphia, like Allen Iverson, he performed neither task very well. Standing the test of time, taking care of his body, and staying out of trouble off the floor. Like say whatever. And they both came from like not the best circumstances growing up.
Yeah.
I just think the way LeBron has managed his whole career is like amazing. And yes, he's super annoying at times and super corny too.
That's the thing. It's like, I mean, that's like, I don't like really root for him to lose or anything, but like I grew up being a LeBron hater as a Celtics fan. Like,
I did too.
So,
I didn't
but
like
of course he's a great guy, it seems. Yeah. And there's some things like I like the running coaches out of town and stuff.
Yeah.
Like
you can
I would also say there's a bunch of superstars in today's NBA. You can say that about,
what I mean?
I think Giannis did it last year and we all think Giannis is unblemished. So,
well, I mean, look, Jason Kidd was notorious for being a coach killer.
Big time.
Magic Johnson.
Big time. Oh yeah. Magic is historically one of the best. Magic and Kobe, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I mean, oof. Yeah.
And if you think about it.
I love that about Magic though, is that I'm not saying he's like this bad guy or anything, but that kind of gets forgotten. Is he was a tough dude to work with at times as a teammate or as a coach. Yeah. Like that kind of gets lost in the fold.
And as a husband.
Yes. And that's another thing I was going to bring up. And like, I mean, as a husband, as a dad at times, but it's kind of gets lost in that, Larry Bird was, especially with this Showtime or Winning Time, stupid show that was. It was like
stupid.
Oh, it's fucking terrible, man.
Oh, it was great.
Oh, come on.
Oh yeah.
The story though.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Like that doesn't rub you the wrong way.
It was difficult, right? For me, like
Larry Bird was this backwards hick that was racist for some reason. That's never.
I had to like disassociate, right? Like all things being equal, I have a connection with the guy, the screenwriter Jim Hecht, who wrote it.
Zach, write that down.
So
he's not going to criticize this because he knows Jim Hecht.
Yeah, Jim Hecht's been on The Payoff, and his wife,
has he?
Courtney Friel, is from Philly. She's a news anchor. She's in LA now. They're both in LA. This is
just hitting all the Pete Souza buttons here. Sober, news anchors, Philly.
So at first, and I mean, I could say on here, Courtney's hot too. So I mean, she's
all the Pete angles, good looking, yeah.
So
warm.
I at first I had trouble with it being like the hardcore sports, especially documentary guy that I am. So, but I got over it. And just sort of decided, okay, I'm just going to get lost in this. And it was a fun ride.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it.
There aren't too many shows like that, though. I feel like if a show like that is going to get made, like there aren't too many shows like that I have the opportunity to get lost in. I mean, that's pretty amazing. They picked that topic to actually do an HBO show on. Like, I felt like that was made specifically for me, so I had to watch it. Yeah,
because you hate Larry Bird.
Yeah. I respect Larry Bird. I love Larry Bird.
It's just me being a sports nerd that I am. I know at least the reputations of these people. Like they made out Larry Bird to be racist. They made out Chick Hearn to be racist. It's like,
They made Chick
where
to
did
be
that
a
come
real
from?
drunk.
Like, you know what? Yeah, and it's like there's nothing. Like his relatives are still alive. Like they can. Like,
Yeah.
this doesn't matter. And
Well, the
Jerry
Jerry
West was
West.
the worst one.
Yeah.
And he was still alive when this was airing, and it just adds to, like, I saw the Lakers are doing like a tribute patch to Jerry West this year, and I almost want to be like, don't, like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like the way they treated him, like after all he had done for them was so shitty. And he like hated the Lakers at the end. Like he didn't not reconcile with the Lakers. And I know this was not a Lakers,
Yeah, I mean,
like a Lakers thing. It was a separate thing. But then they
if
make
you
him out
wanted to
be
see
this,
a Lakers
this
thing, you could watch
fucking-
the show Dynasty on Hulu. That was a totally Lakered out, which was awesome.
They make him out. They make Jerry West to be this psychopath, like awful. And everyone's like, oh, that's not really the Jerry West I remember. Like, I don't know, he's a competitive guy, but I don't think he was, throwing shit out the window and just berating everyone. And it was a very weird depiction of a couple of different guys in that. And what's funny is I think actually the one of the big characters, I think the one they might have got the closest was
Red?
what? No, I mean, kind of in a way, but probably Pat Riley.
Yeah.
With the like the tough upbringing, and he had mental illness problems like that people didn't really know about till years later before he coached the Lakers. Kind of an unknown guy, just a jag in the NBA after being an All-American at Kentucky.
Yeah.
And it kind of like everything I've read that makes sense. Like he flipped the switch when he became the head coach.
Yeah.
And just became this alpha and has been that way ever since. And they go in on the Kareem thing, like Kareem being a dick, which is true.
Very.
Was it over the top? I don't know, but that at least seems to add up with everything else we've heard about Kareem. I can never forget, man. One time I was watching like Sports Center. This is like 10, 15 years ago. I was a kid.
Yeah.
And there's this guy on there talking about how he's on like live with, I don't know, PTI or something, talking about how Kareem should have a statue outside the Staples Center. And, all the things he'd done for the game, this, that, and the other. And my sister was watching it with me. She didn't watch sports. And she was like, man, this guy really likes Kareem. I was like, yep, nobody loves Kareem more than Kareem. Because that's who it was saying he needs a statue out there. I like couldn't believe it. I was like 12 years old. I was like, is this what they do? Like, is this how they get statues?
Kareem, I saw Kareem when I was a public relations assistant for the Charlotte Bobcats. He was traveling with the Lakers. I think he was working with their big men. He was like a second row coach, right? So, but you're in the second row and you're sort of accessible to fans as far as like ones that are walking to their seats. And nobody was saying anything negative. Kareem, they're all like talking to him, and some people are like
hook shots.
Some people are patting him. This is like while the game's going on. And I don't know, he probably he stood up. He's like, I'm working. I was like, and I remember being around and being like, oh my God, like, whoa. Yeah, he's kind of like, he's just a different guy.
From the best with that. Yeah. Being with Wilt in his early days. You ever hear that story about him and Wilt in the elevator?
No.
Oh my God. It's one of my favorite stories.
Tell it. And then I have another elevator story that Zach can, I think, concur because he's read the same book.
So apparently Kareem and Wilt are in an elevator. This is Kareem's early days in basketball. And this guy comes in and he looks up. He goes, how's the weather up there? And Wilt goes, just spits on him and goes, it's fucking raining.
Now that story is bogus.
Awesome, man.
So
that's awesome. I'm sorry. By the way, those two guys hated each other at the end.
That's a rumor, by the way. That story. Because I read a Sports Illustrated article when I was a kid about, and you want to talk about dudes talking about dudes. A center who played for Florida. He played for the Spurs. He was a second-round draft pick named Dwayne Shinsis. Dwayne Shinsis went to Florida. And that story apparently applies to him, too. He did the It's Raining spit.
Really?
So maybe he got it from somebody else.
Maybe he was inspired.
Maybe he was inspired.
I think I heard the story from Kareem. I trust Kareem.
Was that on PTI?
It was the next question. Yeah. I'm Zach, inclined to believe from what we know about Will.
No, I thought you were going to tell.
No, so here's the story. So
he was going to tell that same story.
In the No, in the Kobe and Shaq era, Lakers, the Jeff Pearlman book, 3 Ring Circus, they were at the Grand Hyatt. The All-Star game was in New York. And on the elevator, Jason Williams, the guy who got in trouble, for the limo driver.
Played for the Nets.
Played for the Nets. Another payoff guest.
Sure.
Great guy.
Really?
Doing well now. Yeah.
Nice.
And Kobe Bryant and Donald Trump. And on the elevator, Jason Williams says, "What's up?" to Kobe. And Kobe kind of like just totally shrugs him off. And Jason Williams says, like, "Hey, like I said, what's up?" Like Rook or something. And Kobe like blows him off again. And Jason Williams goes after Kobe, and Donald Trump apparently like
Has to step in.
That's
As
true,
the
right, Zach?
awkward
Yeah, I remember that from the
bystander
book,
in the
yeah.
elevator.
Yeah.
There are a
That's
lot
funny,
of
man.
stories like that. Book is so good though.
Yeah.
Like,
So many like gems. And
oh yeah, of like there's a I can't even remember his name, but there's a backup center that like it might just be during training camp. Like I don't even know if he
Yeah.
ended up making the roster. If he did, it wasn't for long. That like Shaq invited to like his house for like the team barbecue. And like the guy shows up and he's just assuming that like I got the invite just because Shaq's being nice to everybody. And it's like Shaq invites him in. And he's like, "Man, I'm so glad we have you here. What you did over at like New Mexico is like such and such." And he starts like giving the dude his career stats. And he's like,
Hell yeah.
he had no reason to know any of
Hell
that.
yeah.
And
I
it's
love
just
some
like
sickos,
like
man.
with all the, because there's stories in there of like Kobe being great. And with all the great Kobe stories, there are some that,
there's a lot of bad.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but with Shaq, not saying there aren't some bad in there, but you just see that like that dude has always just been kind of larger than life and just
A great guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. A great guy. Yeah. And he and Kobe, that's kind of where they clash because Zach
Because Jack's
Zach
too good
was
a
just
guy.
he was such an enforcer, but Shaq was such an enforcer on the floor, but he was didn't work as hard as Kobe, but he was way nicer. And Kobe was, by all accounts, God rest his soul, kind of a douche when he was younger.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Jeff Pearlman had to write that in the preface, like, hey, because Kobe had just died.
Mhm.
He's like, this is going to seem weird, but like, by no means is this book like I'm looking to slight Kobe Bryant. These are stories that were told to me, and
Do you have Kobe in your top 5 all time?
I think he might be like just on the outside.
I'd probably have him in like the 9 to 12 range.
Yeah. He was such a killer though. He's another one of those intangible guys like Jordan,
Sure.
where like LeBron does
Jordan
not
has,
have that.
yeah. I think with Kobe, like there is a big part of his career that you can't discount where he was a great player, but you could argue he was hurting his team.
Yes.
And it really wasn't like Phil turned him around when they won
Yeah.
back to back, and he became a different player. Even from that series they lost to the Celtics to the next year when they beat the Magic, like you could tell he was a different kind of player. And crunch time was still his,
Yeah.
but he did a lot more to kind of solidify. And to be fair to him, he kept it after that. He still probably took too many shots, but
Well, that's the Lakers being like, they're so loyal, and they just did it for LeBron,
mhm.
and they did it for Bronny. Like they take care of their superstars. Like that last Kobe had no business getting that last contract, but he got it. And they the same thing. Like Bronny James, second
Shaq
round
like
pick.
the only one that left, like with basketball left in him.
Well, yeah, I guess so. And I forget like that was the Shaq Kobe like splintering, right?
Yeah. And there was some talk of like, oh, maybe Shaq is washed up, and he wasn't.
Not at all.
He still had a couple more years left in him. But he might be the only one that, like, as a star left. By the way, the only downside, if you can call it that, to the Celtics being so fucking awesome now, is that the Lakers are so pathetic, and that we will not get a Celtics-Lakers
No.
finals in the next few years.
No
No
we
way.
won't.
In fact, they're gonna be a bad team in the next like 2-3 years,
Does LeBron retire after this year?
probably.
You think so?
Probably.
I
Yeah.
think
And they're not in a good situation anyway, even with him. I mean, he's still great, and Anthony Davis, when he's out there, is fantastic.
I think it's very possible he announces his retirement like as he gets ready to start camp.
Oh, you think he'll do a retirement tour, won't he?
Oh, LeBron is not a guy who's I don't think he'll get his money's worth for
He'll
sure.
definitely
That's
do that,
that's when
yeah.
he kind of can seem
When
a
did
little
those
annoying.
start? We got to wrap this up, but
Yeah.
did those ever happen when you were growing up?
Yeah,
Really?
Kareem,
Like a whole-
Kareem farewell, Magic
That
Johnson.
checks out.
I mean, sorry, Kareem farewell,
That checks out.
Dr. J, big time farewell. Yeah, there were definitely those two specifically. I
Okay.
remember being some of the first I remember.
The only one I've heard ever get killed on it is Krzyzewski.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
And I'm like, come on, dude. I will defend Krzyzewski there
Coach K's the man.
because then he's got someone else doing his recruiting for him. And they're not saying, hey, you want to come play for Coach K? But I'm going to leave. I'm not telling you that, but I'm going to leave. I thought that was actually really upfront of him to do. And hey, Shire's our main recruiter. He ends up becoming the head coach anyway. Like, here's the guys you're going to play for. Anyway, Pete Souza, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to be on with you. You're at 1:00.
Yeah, at 1:00, and I want to talk to you. We started this conversation off talking about Don Van Natta. I want to talk to you about Bob Kraft in the NFL Hall of Fame and why the hell he's not in there.
And then I will give you my top 5.
Top 5 what?
Kobe's not in it.
Okay, all right.
Larry Bird's number 1.
All right.
That's coming up on the Pete Souza Show at 1:00. So be sure to tune in for that. Thank you guys for tuning in every day, all the time. We're going to be back tomorrow at 11. You can see us on the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Look at that. Wherever you get your podcasts too. And at the Cam Show on Instagram. You can find our Twitter handles in the description as well as the voicemail line. Leave us a voicemail. We'll pick it apart and have a lot of fun with it. On the Cam Show, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network.